Hi, this is Mark. In this video, we'll take a look at combining shadows. When you're working with multiple characters, you want to be able to combine shadows because you don't want them to overlap. In order to demonstrate this, I'll go back to OpenGL and remove my cast shadow. Let's save this and move everything to the side. And let's disconnect this for safekeeping. Okay, so we have one character. And in order to demonstrate this, I'm going to shrink this character down. I'm going to move my pivot point and shrink it down here. And let's move this character over here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create offset instances so that we can simulate having multiple characters. Add a peg transformation, and I'll add a peg over here and move this offset character to the right. Maybe move him backwards. And he's further back, so I'll shrink him down just a smidge, and let's do the same. Let's offset this character now and move that one to the left. So they're over here. So I have three characters with no shadows. Usually in an animated television series, you would have puddle shadows, which are circular blurred shadows, as cast shadows are quite complicated to track, especially if the characters are moving or not, whereas a puddle shadow is really just a drop-down circle, much easier to track a character with. So let's create a puddle shadow. We're going to create a new drawing with Control R or Command R on a Mac, and let's call this Shadow. Next, we're going to plug that behind all our characters, so let's move it over here. And let's draw. So we need a color. If we go to our color, we can select the comp palette, and let's pick any of these colors, doesn't matter which one, as it's just meant to be a shape. So we're going to use the ellipse, and let's just draw an ellipse down here in perspective to the ground. And you'll want to fill that with the paint bucket. Next, we're going to go inside our drawing, and we're going to remove the line because I like to keep simple shapes and easier to grab with the marquee of your select tool. So selecting the line, I'll delete that. Now I have one single shape and no line. Next, let's add a peg because we'll want to control that. So I'm going to select the shadow and hit Control P. So now I have a peg to move this shadow around. I can then apply a shadow module. So let's type SHA and drag that in. Let's take a look at what that looks like in render mode. Okay, so we have a basic puddle shadow and we want two more. So what we could do is literally take these same offsets and create them here, or we could duplicate the shadow. It all depends on what setup you have. Let's duplicate it just for the sake of this lesson. So I'm going to do this and copy paste. And let's bring that down here. And I will move this over here. I'm going to do that again one more time. And I will move this one over here. Now I can always move this down here so that I can control these shadows from their base. Okay. So we have three shadows, and we need to apply the shadow module to all of them so that they all three have a shadow. So let's do that. And let's take a look at the render view. So here's what's happening. When we have overlapping shadows, we don't want to have these semi-transparencies doubling up because we want it to look as a single shadow. So the best way to do this is to physically combine all three before any of these shadow modules get applied, which will allow us to flatten everything and then blend one time. So think about an order of operation. I'll create a new composite with Control H or Command H on a Mac, and I will connect all three of these shadows together, and all three then go into the one shadow module, which then blends them properly. So I'll just delete these two. You can see how I have three shadows. They used to overlap, now they get flattened together, and then they get this applied to them. Say you have drawn your shadows with, say, the red palette. So let's do that by switching to the red palette and using the paint bucket in our drawing. We'll paint those just to make sure that all three are done. Since the drawings are cloned, all three will reflect the red. Now if we render this out, same thing will happen. The only thing is, if you do this, you'll see red. So just remember that you can add the shadow module and control the color, or you can use a matte blur and also control the color there. Alternatively, you could also use a color scale and remove the saturation so it goes back down to a black and white image, and then reduce the value and alpha in this. And this is how you combine puddle shadows.